What would you do if you suddenly inherited more money than you could ever spend in 3 lifetimes? Would you tell your family immediately? Would you share it with everyone you love? Well, I thought I knew the answer to that question, until it actually happened to me. My name is David, and 3 years ago, my life changed forever when I inherited $120 million from my great-uncle's tech empire. But instead of celebrating, I made a decision that would tear my family apart and teach me the hardest lesson of my life. You see, my great-uncle Marcus was always the black sheep of our family. He disappeared when I was just 10 years old, and for 25 years, nobody heard from him. My parents always said he was a failure, a dreamer who chased impossible ideas. They painted him as someone who abandoned his responsibilities and left everyone behind. So when his lawyer called me that Tuesday morning, telling me that Marcus had passed away and left me his entire fortune, I couldn't believe it. Marcus hadn't been a failure at all. He had built a revolutionary software company that changed how hospitals manage patient data worldwide. But here's where my story takes a dark turn. As I sat in that lawyer's office, staring at documents worth more money than I could comprehend, I made a choice that would haunt me. I decided not to tell anyone. Not my parents, not my wife Sarah, not even my twin brother Mike, who had always been my closest friend. I convinced myself I had good reasons. I wanted to see how people treated me when they thought I was still just regular David, the insurance agent who struggled to pay his mortgage. I told myself I was protecting my family from the chaos that sudden wealth brings. But deep down, I think I was scared. Scared of how everything would change. For 3 years, I lived 2 completely different lives. During the day, I was still David, the insurance agent, driving my 10-year-old Honda to work, complaining about bills, and pretending to worry about money like everyone else. But secretly, I had moved my inheritance into offshore accounts and private investments. I told my family the lawyer was still sorting through Marcus's complicated estate, buying myself time to figure out what to do. The hardest part wasn't keeping the secret from strangers, it was lying to the people I loved most. When my wife Sarah worked double shifts as a nurse to help us save for our dream house, I wanted to tell her we could buy any house she wanted. When my parents struggled to pay for my father's heart medication, I had to bite my tongue and watch them sacrifice their small savings. When my brother Mike's construction business nearly went under during the pandemic, I gave him a small loan from my regular account while sitting on a fortune that could have saved everything he had worked for. Every family dinner became a performance. Every conversation about money felt like walking through a minefield. I became an expert at changing subjects, making excuses, and living with the constant weight of deception. Sarah would sometimes look at me with these confused eyes, like she knew something was different, but couldn't figure out what. The guilt was eating me alive, but I had gone too far to turn back. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I convinced myself that my family was happier not knowing. They weren't fighting about money or treating me differently. My parents still saw me as their responsible son. Sarah still loved me for who I was, and Mike still came to me for advice, like we were equals. But what I didn't realize was that by trying to protect them from the truth, I was actually stealing something much more valuable from all of us: genuine connection and trust. After 3 years of this double life, Sarah finally saved enough money for us to start looking at houses. She had worked so hard, picking up extra shifts, selling her grandmother's jewelry, even taking a weekend job at a local bakery. She had saved $40,000, and she was so proud. I can still see her face when she showed me our savings account, how her eyes lit up with hope and excitement. She had found this beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy. Just a 3-bedroom home with a small garden where we could maybe start a family. But when we went to the bank for our mortgage pre-approval, everything started to unravel. The loan officer was reviewing our financial documents when she paused, looking confused at her computer screen. "Mr. Johnson," she said, "there seems to be some unusual activity connected to your Social Security number. Large financial movements that don't match your declared income." My blood turned cold. I had been so careful, but somewhere along the line, the massive inheritance had created digital footprints that were finally catching up with me. Sarah was sitting right there, holding my hand, completely unaware that our entire marriage was about to explode. The loan officer continued asking questions about accounts I couldn't explain, investments that didn't make sense with my insurance agent salary, and financial advisors I had supposedly never mentioned to my wife. I tried to deflect, to make excuses, but Sarah wasn't stupid. She could see the panic in my eyes, could hear the lies crumbling in my voice. That night, Sarah didn't come home from her shift. She went straight to her sister's house instead. The next morning, I found a note on our kitchen table with just 4 words: "We need to talk." When she finally came home, she wasn't alone. She had Mike with her, and both of them looked like they had been crying all night. Somehow, Sarah had figured out enough pieces to know that I had been lying about money for years, and she had called the one person she trusted to help her understand. What was happening to our family? Sitting at our kitchen table, with my wife and brother staring at me like I was a stranger, I finally told them everything. About Marcus, about the inheritance, about the 3 years of lies and the $120 million that had been sitting in accounts, while they struggled and sacrificed for things I could have given them without even noticing the money was gone. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Sarah spoke first, and her voice was so quiet I had to lean in to hear her. "You watched me work 70-hour weeks to save for a house," she said, "when you could have bought us 10 houses without thinking about it." Then she started crying. Not the soft tears of sadness, but the angry, heartbroken sobs of someone who had just realized that the person they loved most had been lying to them for 3 years. Mike's reaction was different, but somehow worse. He just sat there, staring at me with this look of complete disbelief. Finally, he said, "David, I almost lost everything. My business, my house, my kids' college funds. I came to you begging for help, and you gave me $5,000 like you were doing me this huge favor. $5,000 when you had $120 million sitting in a bank account." But the worst part was still coming. My parents arrived an hour later. Sarah had called them too. When I told them about Marcus's inheritance, about how he had actually been incredibly successful, my mother broke down completely. She told me how guilty she had felt for years about the way the family had treated Marcus, how she had regretted the harsh words and the years of silence. She had spent decades thinking her brother died, believing his family had given up on him, when the truth was that he had forgiven all of them and had tried to give his family a gift through me, my father, who had always been the strong one in our family. Looked at me with disappointment I had never seen before. "Son," he said, "you didn't just lie about money. You stole 3 years of honesty from everyone who loves you. You made us all live in a world that wasn't real." The next few weeks were the darkest period of my life. Sarah moved out, taking only her clothes and the photo albums from our 5 years of marriage. She left her engagement ring on the dresser with another note. I don't know who I was married to, but it wasn't the person I thought I loved. Mike stopped answering my calls completely. My parents would talk to me, but every conversation felt forced and painful, like we were all reading from scripts. The money that I thought would solve every problem had created problems I never imagined could exist. I tried everything to fix what I had broken. I transferred $2 million into Sarah's account, but she sent it back with a message saying that money couldn't buy back trust. I paid off Mike's business debts without asking, but instead of gratitude. He was furious that I had invaded his privacy and made decisions about his life without his consent. I hired a family counselor, begging everyone to come to sessions so we could work through this together. Only my parents agreed to come, and those sessions were brutal. The counselor helped me understand that my decision to hide the inheritance wasn't really about protecting my family. It was about protecting myself from the fear of how wealth might change our relationships. But in trying to avoid that change, I had created something much worse. I had made every interaction we had for 3 years feel fake and manipulated. The hardest part was realizing that my family's love for me had never been about money in the first place. Sarah had fallen in love with an insurance agent who drove an old car and worried about mortgage payments. My parents were proud of the son who worked hard and stayed humble. Mike respected a brother who understood his struggles because we faced similar challenges. By hiding my wealth, I had actually robbed them of the chance to show me that their love was real and unconditional. 6 months after that terrible day in our kitchen, I made the hardest decision of my life. I called a family meeting, and this time, I wasn't going to ask for forgiveness. I was going to prove that I had learned from my mistakes. I had spent months working with financial advisors, lawyers, and therapists to create a plan that would honor Marcus's memory and rebuild the trust I had destroyed. First, I established the Marcus Johnson Foundation, dedicated to supporting innovative healthcare technology and helping families dealing with medical debt, the same kind of debt my parents had been struggling with while I sat on a fortune. I transferred $60 million to the foundation, with my parents as board members and Sarah and Mike as beneficiaries if they ever chose to be involved. Second, I gave each family member complete control over their own financial future. I set up trust funds that they could access or ignore as they chose, with no strings attached and no expectations from me. The money would be there if they needed it, but they would never have to feel obligated to me because of it. Most importantly, I sold our house, the one Sarah and I had shared during my years of lies, and moved into a simple apartment. I went back to work at the insurance agency, not because I needed the money, but because I needed to rebuild my identity as someone my family could trust. I wanted to show them that David the insurance agent was real, that the person they had loved wasn't just an act I was performing. The changes didn't happen overnight. Sarah agreed to have coffee with me after 8 months, but it took another 6 months before she was willing to have dinner. Mike started texting me again around the same time, usually just questions about the foundation or updates about his business, which was thriving again thanks to the debt relief I had provided. 2 years after the truth came out. Sarah and I were sitting in the same coffee shop where we had our first date 7 years earlier. She looked different, older, maybe wiser, definitely more careful with her trust. But she was there, and she was talking to me like I was someone worth talking to again. "David," she said, "I want you to understand something. I'm not here because of the money, and I'm not here because I've forgotten what happened. I'm here because I can see that you've spent 2 years proving that the person I fell in love with was real. The David who works at the insurance agency, who worries about other people, who makes terrible jokes and burns breakfast on Sunday mornings, that person wasn't an act." Mike had started calling me again, not just about business, but about life. His construction company was doing better than ever. And he had used some of the trust fund money to expand into affordable housing projects. "You know what's funny?" he told me during one of our weekly phone calls. "I always thought having money would change everything, but working with the foundation has shown me that money is just a tool. It's what you do with it that matters." My parents had thrown themselves into the foundation work with an energy I hadn't seen from them in years. My father's health had improved dramatically once he could afford proper medication and regular doctor visits. But more than that, he seemed to have found new purpose in helping other families avoid the struggles they had faced. My mother often talked about Marcus, wondering if he would be proud of how his gift was being used to help people. The house that Sarah had dreamed of was still for sale. We had lost it during those months when everything fell apart. One day, she mentioned seeing it in a real estate listing, and I asked if she wanted to drive by and look at it. We sat in my car outside that little house with the garden, and Sarah said something I'll never forget. "I don't think I want that house anymore. I want something we choose together with no secrets between us." Today, 3 years after the truth came out, can honestly say that losing my family's trust was the best thing that ever happened to me. I know that sounds crazy, but it taught me lessons that no amount of money could have purchased. I learned that love isn't something you can protect by controlling information. It's something that grows stronger when it's built on complete honesty. Sarah and I are together again, but our relationship is different now. Better, I think. We talk about money openly, we make financial decisions together, and we both understand that trust is something you have to earn every single day. We bought a house together 6 months ago, not the original dream house, but a different one that we chose as partners who had survived the worst and decided we were stronger together. Mike and I have started a tradition of working together on Habitat for Humanity projects every other weekend. It turns out that having money makes it easier to volunteer your time for things that matter. We don't talk much about the past anymore, but we've built something new on the foundation of what we learned from our mistakes. The Marcus Johnson Foundation has helped over 300 families with medical debt and funded 12 breakthrough healthcare technology projects. Every grant we approve, every family we help, feels like a step toward honoring the uncle I never got to know, but who taught me the most important lesson of my life through his final gift. But perhaps the most important change is how I think about wealth and family. Money didn't make me happy. The people I love made me happy. Money didn't solve my problems. It created problems I never knew existed. What money can do when handled with wisdom and honesty is give you the freedom to focus on what really matters, the relationships that define who you are. If I could go back to that day in the lawyer's office 3 years ago, I would tell myself something simple. The people who love you don't love you because you're rich or poor. They love you because you're you. And if you can't trust them with the truth about your life, then you don't really believe in their love at all. The $120 million inheritance wasn't really Marcus's gift to me. His real gift was the opportunity to learn that hiding from the people you love is just another way of hiding from yourself. Today, my family knows everything about my financial situation, my fears about money, and my commitment to using wealth as a tool for good rather than a source of shame or control. Sarah often says that we're lucky. The mortgage application revealed my secret when it did, because she's not sure how much longer our marriage could have survived the weight of my lies. She's probably right. Sometimes the truth has to explode everything before it can heal anything. The house buying process that I thought would expose and destroy my family actually saved us all. It forced us to rebuild our relationships on honesty instead of deception, on shared values instead of hidden secrets. And that foundation is strong enough to support not just our love for each other, but also our responsibility to use Marcus's gift in ways that honor his memory and help others. Money changes everything, but it doesn't have to change everything for the worse. The choice is always yours.